On a quiet spring evening in April 2023, 56-year-old Michael Dale paid $11,000 for what he believed would be a consensual private session rooted in adult roleplay. He wasn't meeting a stranger off the street. He had arranged everything through a known content creator, Michaela Rylaarsdam, who went by the online name Ashley Sincal. To her subscribers, she was a dominatrix, a performer, someone who filmed highly stylized scenes for OnlyFans. But that night, in a quiet home in Escondido, California, events took a dangerous turn. Michael Dale had specific desires. According to prosecutors, he wanted to be wrapped in saran wrap, sealed in duct tape, restrained fully, what some in the kink community call mummification. It was supposed to be intense, it was supposed to be temporary, and it was supposed to be safe. But at some point in the session, Michaela introduced an added layer of restriction. Too much. She placed a plastic bag over Dale's head, wrapped more plastic around it, and continued filming as he began to visibly struggle. He showed signs of distress, and the camera kept rolling. 4 hours later, Michaela finally called 911. When paramedics arrived, Dale was unresponsive. He was later declared in critical condition at the hospital. The official cause was listed as asphyxia, and the San Diego County Medical Examiner ruled it a homicide. In February 2025, Michaela Rylaarsdam was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. She has pleaded not guilty and remains in custody without bail. But what makes this case so disturbing is not just the footage or the fact that it was filmed. It's the context, the motive, the aftermath. This wasn't a stranger-on-stranger attack. It was a recorded session, arranged and paid for in advance. And according to authorities, there's no evidence Michael Dale ever asked for the plastic bag that was used in the final moments of filming. This is a story about blurred boundaries, between consent and coercion, between fantasy and real-world consequences. It's about what happens when content creation turns dangerous. And it's about a woman who built her brand on control, only to lose control of everything. Whether it was reckless negligence or something more calculated, the jury will soon decide Michaela Rylaarsdam's fate. But one thing is already clear. This wasn't just a tragic mistake. It was a catastrophic choice that played out on camera. Whether it was reckless negligence or something more calculated, the jury will soon decide Michaela Rylaarsdam's fate. But one thing is already clear. This wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a fatal miscalculation that unfolded on camera. Before her name was associated with a homicide investigation, Michaela Rylaarsdam was building a digital brand that blurred the line between domination and danger. Known online as Ashley Sincal, she ran a BDSM-centered content business alongside her husband under the name Sincal Entertainment. Her content catered to extreme fetishes, bondage, breath play, role reversal, and it was all pay-per-view. To her subscribers, she wasn't just a performer. She was a creator who pushed limits. The kind of creator who offered made-to-order content that promised to go further than most mainstream adult platforms would ever allow. Her social presence was curated, bold, and unapologetic. But behind the scenes, prosecutors would later argue, there was a pattern of reckless behavior and no formal training in how to manage the dangerous situations she was monetizing. Court documents later revealed that Michaela had been in contact with Michael Dale for months. He wasn't a one-time customer. He had paid her thousands of dollars over time for increasingly intense scenes. According to investigators, Dale had a fascination with immobilization, restriction, and domination scenarios that involved being fully wrapped in plastic and rendered helpless. Michaela agreed to accommodate those fantasies, and she recorded every moment on her phone. Her husband, who helped operate their adult business, was reportedly present at the beginning of the session. He received at least $1,000 from Dale that day. But after dropping Michaela off, he left. What happened next was supposed to be a one-on-one content shoot. But instead of a controlled environment with safe words, medical safeguards, or even basic protocols, prosecutors allege it was an unregulated scene driven by profit, and ultimately, fatal neglect. Despite portraying herself as a skilled and experienced dominatrix, Michaela later admitted to police that she had no formal training in bondage, no CPR certification, and had learned most of her techniques from Reddit forums and amateur porn blogs. And that detail, her lack of preparation, would become a key element in the prosecution's case. Because if you're charging thousands of dollars for sessions involving suffocation, what responsibility do you have when things go wrong? To her fans, Michaela was a fantasy, but to authorities, she was a performer playing a dangerous game without knowing the rules. And when that game ended in tragedy, her digital persona collided with real-life accountability. April 12, 2023. The session was scheduled. The payment had already been processed. Michael Dale, a longtime client, was expecting an intense, consensual scene. What he didn't know was that it would be his last. That day, Michaela Rylaarsdam arrived at Dale's home in Escondido, California. Her husband had dropped her off and left shortly afterward. From that point on, she was alone with Dale. Her phone was set up to record everything, just like she'd done in past sessions. But this time, things were different. The session began with what Dale reportedly requested: complete bodily restraint. Court documents say Michaela wrapped him tightly in saran wrap, immobilizing his arms and legs. She added duct tape over his mouth. She glued women's boots to his feet. She even applied adhesive over his eyes to fully blindfold him. According to prosecutors, he was completely unable to move. This wasn't just kink, it was total sensory deprivation. Then she escalated. Investigators say Michaela placed a large plastic bag over Dale's head. Not loosely. She wrapped it tightly around his neck using more plastic wrap. The camera, still recording, captured what happened next. Muffled sounds, slow breathing, and eventually, silence. Dale was fully restrained, unable to remove the bag or signal distress. According to the affidavit, Michaela did not stop recording. In fact, she reportedly continued with the scene, using a vibrator in front of the camera while Dale lay still, completely motionless. The footage, later recovered from her phone, would become a centerpiece in the case. For nearly 4 hours, Michaela didn't call for help. At 10:10 p.m., she finally dialed 911. When paramedics arrived, they found her performing CPR. Dale had no pulse. He was rushed to the hospital and placed on life support. He never regained consciousness. Doctors declared him brain dead and, shortly after, removed him from life support. The medical examiner ruled the death a homicide by asphyxia. The most damning detail: authorities say there is no evidence Michael Dale ever requested the plastic bag that killed him. While he had consented to being wrapped in saran wrap and restrained, the fatal element, the sealed bag over his head, was not part of any known agreement. Prosecutors argue it was an unnecessary and dangerous escalation, done purely for content. When asked by police why she didn't call for help sooner, Michaela reportedly replied, "I didn't want to get banned from the platform." That single line, recorded during an interview, was later highlighted in court as a chilling sign of misplaced priorities. A man was dying, and her first thought was the risk of losing monetization. Whether Michaela panicked, hesitated, or simply didn't care, that's what prosecutors say matters most. Because once Dale was no longer breathing and the camera kept rolling, this case stopped being about fantasy. It became evidence. The footage was damning, the audio haunting, and the timeline unforgivable. When investigators reviewed the video pulled from Michaela Rylaarsdam's phone, they weren't looking at a blurry, chaotic clip. They were watching a clear, uninterrupted recording of a man suffocating to death, filmed by someone who claimed it was all consensual. Michael Dale died in April 2023, but it wasn't until nearly a year later that charges were officially filed. In February 2025, Michaela was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. She was taken into custody without incident and booked into the Las Colinas detention and re-entry facility in San Diego County. The charge sent shockwaves across both the adult creator community and the wider public. This wasn't a case of behind-the-scenes abuse or a private incident leaking online. This was a filmed, monetized piece of content. evidence of a death captured for subscribers. Prosecutors didn't hold back. During the arraignment, they described the scene as a snuff film disguised as BDSM. They pointed to her long delay in calling for help, her continued filming during and after the fatal moment, and the total absence of medical safeguards. There were no scissors nearby to cut the plastic, no CPR equipment, no safety shears. Nothing that would be expected of a professional working in edge play or breath control scenarios. According to the state, this wasn't an accident. It was reckless endangerment with fatal consequences. And then came the motive. Investigators found messages between Michaela and other clients referencing the popularity of asphyxiation play. Some of her videos had reportedly been labeled with tags like "no safe word" and "complete control." Prosecutors alleged that she was not only pushing boundaries, she was trying to capitalize on the growing demand for more dangerous, more extreme content. In their words, she escalated the risk to drive up views. But Michaela's defense team painted a different picture. They argued that Michael Dale was an informed, willing participant, that he had requested similar scenes before, that he had paid thousands for increasingly intense sessions, and had always known the risks. They claimed Michaela was untrained, yes, but not malicious. That she panicked, that she froze, that she called 911 as soon as she realized he wasn't breathing. They insisted this was a consensual scene gone tragically wrong, not a calculated homicide. Still, the state refused to offer bail. The prosecution emphasized that Michaela had the means and motive to flee, and that her business was still active at the time of the investigation. The judge agreed. Michaela Rylaarsdam remains in custody to this day, with no option for pretrial release. Her next court date is scheduled for April 2025, nearly 2 years after Dale's death. And when she steps into that courtroom, the jury won't just be hearing descriptions of what happened, they'll be watching it. Frame by frame, breath by breath. This isn't just a trial about intent. It's a trial about responsibility, about whether someone who profits from edge play content has a duty to protect the people they film, or whether consent alone is enough to escape blame when a line is crossed. When news of Michaela Rylaarsdam's arrest broke in early 2025, the public response was swift and divided. On one side, critics saw a clear case of exploitation masked as entertainment. On the other, her defenders argued it was a tragic accident being weaponized by a justice system that doesn't understand kink, adult work, or the nuances of consent. But the most immediate reaction wasn't outrage. It was silence. Her OnlyFans page went dark. No new posts, no public statement, no apology. Her social media, once active with behind-the-scenes updates, was stripped down or made private. And from the platform itself, nothing. OnlyFans issued no comment. There was no ban, no content warning, no public distancing. For some, that was the most unsettling part, that a man could die during a filmed session intended for upload, and the company involved simply moved on. In adult creator forums, the case sparked fear. If one fatal mistake could lead to a murder charge, where did the legal line actually fall? Was it the lack of safety gear? The delay in calling for help? Or the fact that she kept filming after it became clear something was wrong? Creators debated it privately, but few spoke publicly. The risk was too high. Journalists began drawing comparisons to past controversies in adult entertainment, cases where consent had been weaponized, or where creators pushed content beyond ethical limits for financial gain. But Michaela's case was different. This wasn't a backroom shoot with shady producers. This was a small business, run by a married couple, operating openly on a mainstream subscription platform. It raised a chilling question. How many others are out there, pushing limits with no training, no safeguards, and no oversight? Meanwhile, the video itself, what prosecutors described as a snuff scene disguised as kink, was never released publicly, but rumors swirled. Some claimed to have seen screenshots. Others said parts of it had been shared before her arrest. None of that has been confirmed. What is known is that investigators recovered the footage directly from Michaela's phone, and that it forms the core of the prosecution's case. Michael Dale, the victim, had no public presence, no social media, no platform to speak from. But his death was suddenly everywhere. His name appeared in headlines alongside phrases like asphyxiation fetish, OnlyFans death, and BDSM gone wrong. And for his family, largely absent from public discussion, the pain was compounded by the way he was portrayed, not as a person, but as a participant in a failed scene. For Michaela, the silence continued. She made no public statement from jail. Her legal team declined interviews. And unlike other high-profile criminal cases involving influencers or content creators, there were no GoFundMe pages, no organized support campaigns, no viral hashtags. Just a slow, cold descent from internet fame into a courtroom spotlight she never intended to stand in. At the heart of this case is a question that goes far beyond one content creator and one client. What happens when the pursuit of profit overrides safety? When pushing the limits becomes the brand? Michaela Rylaarsdam's story isn't just about a fatal mistake. It's about the invisible line between fantasy and reality, and what happens when that line gets erased on camera. In the world of online adult content, consent is the foundation. But consent is not a shield. It doesn't remove responsibility, especially when power is involved. Especially when someone is fully restrained, Michaela claims it was all agreed upon, that it was just a tragic accident. But prosecutors argue the moment she chose to keep filming rather than helping, everything changed. And then there's the platform. OnlyFans has revolutionized adult entertainment, giving creators direct control over their content and income. But what happens when that freedom allows for content with lethal consequences? Who's responsible for drawing the line when algorithms reward more extreme, more shocking, more profitable material? Is it the creator, the platform, the subscribers? Michael Dale didn't die in secret. He died in front of a camera. And whether or not he consented to every second of what happened that night, he couldn't have known it would end like this. He couldn't have known that what he paid for would become evidence in a murder case. As of now, Michaela Rylaarsdam remains in custody, awaiting trial for second-degree murder. Her defense argues that this was a consensual, unfortunate tragedy. The prosecution says she made deliberate choices that led to a man's death, and soon a jury will decide. But even before that verdict arrives, the case has already left its mark. On a platform that prides itself on creator freedom, on a community of adult performers now questioning where the limits really are, and on the memory of a man who thought he was paying for a private fantasy, but ended up in the middle of a real-life nightmare.